What's up, everybody? I've got a mouthful of yogurt. How you doing? Welcome to Wednesday, June 12th. I'm late. Let's go watch some J-Pow here. Where's it at? I had it. Where'd it go? There it is. All right. I'm late. That's not what I want to do. Let's hear what he has to say. I know that they kept rates even as expected, but we had CPI come in a little cooler than expected. It's even up. I guess it was like 3.3%, far away from their 2% target, but in the right direction. So let's watch this.
Number really, and we're now lapping those. So as you go through the 12-month window, a very low reading drops out and a new reading comes in. The new reading gets added to the 12-month window. So it's just a slight element of conservatism that we're assuming a certain level of incoming monthly PCE and core PCE numbers. We're assuming, a good but not great numbers. And if you put that on top of where we are now, you get a very slight increase in the 12-month reading. Now, do we have high confidence that that's right? No, it's just a kind of conservative way for forecasting things. If we were to get more readings like today's reading, then of course that wouldn't be the case. So it's just a forecasting device. I think. Let me say that we welcome today's reading and hope for more like that.
But if it comes in, just to follow up, it comes in the way you forecast it, it would seem strange for you to be cutting rates at all in context of a rising core PCE. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what we said is that we don't think it'll be appropriate to reduce rates and begin to loosen policy until we have more confidence that inflation is moving back down to 2% on a sustainable basis. And that's the test we've applied. I don't know that this rules that in or out. I mean, really, it's a forecast, a fairly conservative forecast, month by month, that would lead to slightly higher 12 months rates by the end of the year. If we get, better ratings than that, then you will see that come down or remain the same. If you're at 2.6, 2.7, that's a really good place to be.
Nick Tamaros of the Wall Street Journal. Chair Powell, if I look at the rate projections, I see 15 of the 19 that are anticipating either one or two cuts this year, fairly evenly split between the two. And so I wonder if you could explain a little bit more the nuances or the differences there. Would 2 or 3 more inflation readings, like the one that we saw this morning, make a September interest rate cut possible?
So as far as the SEP part of that is concerned, as you know, I talk to all of the other participants on the FOMC every cycle, and we talk about their summary of economic projections and the their dot plot and everything. And what I hear and see is that people are looking at a range of plausible outcomes, and in many cases they're thinking, I can't really distinguish between two of these. They're so close for me. These are very close calls. But we ask them to write down the most likely one, so they do. And I think as you've said, there's 15 of the 19 are kind of clustered around 1 or 2. So I think I would look at all. I look at all of them as plausible, but I look at I think that does tell you kind of what the committee thinks. But what everyone agrees on is it's going to be data dependent. No one brings to this or takes away from it, that is on the committee, a really strong commitment to a particular rate path. It's actually just their forecast, and it's a combination of their forecast and their own reaction function. But again, everyone would say that this is very data dependent, and I don't hold it with high confidence. And I think if you're looking for and don't really think that they're not trying to send a strong signal that this is what I think is the right thing. It's just what they think at a given moment in time, subject to data. In terms of future meetings, we haven't, we don't make decisions about future meetings until we get there. I think in terms of what we need to see, I mentioned it earlier, we want to gain further confidence. Certainly, more good inflation readings will help with that. I'm not going to be specific about how many because, really it's going to be not just the inflation readings, it's going to be the totality of the data. What's happening in the labor market, what's happening with the balance of risks, what's happening with the forecast, what's happening with growth. You look at all of that, and you ask, are we confident, have we reached an appropriate level of confidence that inflation is moving down sustainably to 2%? Or alternatively, do we see really unexpected signs of weakness in the labor market that would call for a response, which is another thing that could happen. But again, we don't see that. And we see today's report as progress and as, building confidence, but we don't see ourselves as having the confidence that would warrant beginning to loosen policy at this time.
And if I could quickly follow up, did you or any of your colleagues change your interest rate projections after 8:30 or whenever you got the inflation numbers today?
So this happens too often, but it does happen. It just is, data came, I think it happened a few meetings ago. So when that happens, when there's an important data print during the meeting, first day or second day, what we do is we make sure people remember that they have the ability to update. We tell them how to do that. And some people do, some people don't, most people don't. And I'm not going to get into the specifics, but you have the ability to do that. So that what's in the SEP actually does reflect the data that we got today, to the extent you can, reflect it in one day. I think we'll see PPI tomorrow. We'll know more about the PCE reading as the month goes on, but the initial CPI reading and its, kind of first level translation to PCE, we did have this morning. We were briefed about it, and people were able to consider whether they should make changes. And as I said, some people generally do, but most people generally don't.
John Allen.
Hi, Chair Powell, Janelle Marte from Bloomberg. As you noted, the labor market is now in many ways back to where it was before the pandemic. I wondered if you could comment on how officials are viewing that. So do you think that there still needs to be more cooling in the labor market to bring inflation all the way down to 2%? Or is there any sense that maybe the labor market is more vulnerable now to higher rates now that many of those imbalances have eased?
Sure. So by so many measures, the labor market was kind of overheated 2 years ago, and we've seen it gradually move back into much better balance between supply and demand. So what have we seen? We've seen labor force supply come up quite a bit through immigration and through recovering participation. That's ongoing mostly now through the immigration channel, but still we've had some increases in prime age labor force. In terms of on the demand side, we've seen quits moving down. We've seen job openings moving down. We've seen wage increases moving from very, very high levels a couple of years ago back down to more sustainable levels. We have seen unemployment creep up now 0.6 over the course of a year or so, very, very gradually. So you put all that together, what you have is still low unemployment, still 4% unemployment, historically low. But it's moved up a little bit. It's softened a bit, and that's an important statistic. But more than that, you've got strong job creation. You have payroll jobs still coming in strong, even though there's an argument that they may be a bit overstated, but still they're strong. So that's what we see. We watch the labor market, of course, and the economy as a whole, but the labor market very carefully, and that's what we see. We see gradual cooling, gradual moving toward better balance. We're monitoring it carefully for signs of something more than that, but we really don't see that.
As a quick follow-up, the surveys that make up the jobs report are showing different tales. There's been some divergence, especially we saw in the last report that we got on Friday. So how do you interpret that, and how does it change your view on the labor market?
So sometimes you can't reconcile the differences. You just have to look at it and try to understand, and that's why it always makes sense to look at a series, in 3, 6, and 12 months of things rather than just one report. But you're right to point to the last report where there were job losses in the household survey, job gains, big job gains in the establishment survey. So, we're left with ambiguous results, and we have to deal with that uncertainty around data. Nonetheless, the overall picture is one of a strong and gradually cooling, gradually rebalancing labor market. Job openings, while they've come way down, are still, greater than the number of unemployed people. The jobs workers gap is still a significantly positive number, greater than it was before the pandemic. So overall, we're looking at what is still a very strong labor market, but not the superheated labor market of 2 years ago, or even 1 year ago.
Thanks, Chair Powell. Neil Irwin with Axios. Back on the rates path, the SEP showed quite a large shift of rate cut expectations relative to March. That's a period in which the economic data flow hasn't been that dramatic a shift. Can you provide some color on what changed in attitudes on the committee over the last 3 months to see a much shallower path of rate cuts this year?
Yeah, the big thing that changed was the inflation forecast. So the inflation forecast moved up several tenths for the end of the year. And as I mentioned earlier in the, what did we take away from this? We had really good inflation data in the second half of last year, then kind of a pause in progress in the first quarter. And what we took away from that was that it's probably going to take longer to get the confidence that we need to begin to loosen policy. So the sense of that is that rate cuts that might have taken place this year take place next year. You know, there are fewer rate cuts in the median this year, but there's one more next year. So if you look at year-end 2025 and 26, you're almost exactly where you would have been. Just it's moved later because of that progress. Now you get different data today. So we'll have to see where the data light the way. You know, the economy has repeatedly surprised forecasters in both directions, and today was certainly a better inflation report than almost anybody expected. And we'll just have to see what the incoming data flow brings and how that affects the outlook and the balance of risks.
Okay, we're going to be getting some cuts.
Gina Smiley, New York Times. Thanks for taking our questions. In the summary of economic projections, the long-run interest rate forecast moved up a bit. I wonder if we should read that as a sign that you think that policy is not sort of as restrictive as we previously expected. You know, how should we interpret what that means about how the committee views its current policy setting?
So two things about that. One is this. You're right, it did move up, but I want to remember to point out that long-run neutral rate of interest is a long-run concept. It really is a theoretical concept, can't be directly observed, and what it is the interest rate that would hold the economy at equilibrium, maximum employment, and price stability, potentially years in the future where there are no shocks. So it's a little bit, it's not something we observe today. Today we've got a very specific economy with all kinds of shocks we're still getting over from the pandemic. So it's, I don't think that the concept of R-star, it's a very important concept in economics and in what we do, but honestly, it doesn't really get you where you need to be to think about what appropriate policy is in the near term. But back to your original question, people have been gradually writing it up because I just think people are coming to the view that rates are less likely to go down to their pre-pandemic levels, which were very low by recent history measures. Now we can't really know that. That's an interesting dispute and discussion to have now. But ultimately, we think that things like the neutral rate are driven by longer-run, slow-moving forces, and there's a really good question about whether those really have changed or whether instead rates and the economy are experiencing a series of persistent but ultimately temporary shocks. That's been the debate, and we can't know. But in the meantime, we're making policy with the economy that we have, with the distortions that we have. And I also, to your other point, I think it is the case that as time has gone by, the question of how restrictive is policy has become one that everyone's asking, and we're asking it too. And my answer has been that policy is restrictive. The question of whether it's sufficiently restrictive is going to be one we know over time. But I think for the reasons I talked about at the last press conference and other places, I think the evidence is pretty clear that policy is restrictive and is having the effects that we would hope for.
Well, thanks, Chair Powell. Howard Schneider with Reuters. Just to carry that a little further, should we read this as a conclusion, the combination of tipping to one cut this year and acknowledging further progress on inflation as kind of a mark to market on the level of restrictiveness that you need, that you in fact have concluded that you weren't quite there yet?
I I'd be reluctant to try to draw that conclusion. I think this is about, looking at the incoming data and asking how much progress are we making on inflation and how is the rest of the economy doing? Is the labor market still strong? That's what we're thinking about. You can translate it into the language you're talking about, but to me the focus is more on we have a goal which is price stability, another goal which is maximum employment. How are we doing there? We think we've got a good, strong labor market still. We think we've been making progress toward the price stability goal, and then for a while there was a pause, and we look at today's thing and we think, well, that's a good reading, and we hope we get more like that. And in the meantime, we're asking, is our policy stance about right? And we think yes, it's about right. We're prepared to adjust it as appropriate, but we think we're getting the things that we would want to get, broadly speaking. And that's why we've been at this policy right now for almost a year.
So just to follow up on that, I think one curious thing here is you've got now this restrictive policy in place and virtually no change in any of the major things for all of this year. You've got growth that stays above long-run potential throughout the forecast period, unemployment that never goes above the long-run estimate, right, of 4.2. So this isn't a story of slack improving inflation. So where's the improvement in inflation coming from that it's going to pick up pace so much in 2025?
Well, it's been coming. Where's it been coming from? We'll start with that. Clearly, a lot of some of what we've been getting is just the reversal of the unwinding of the pandemic-related distortions to both supply and demand, and that is complemented by and amplified, supported by restrictive monetary policy. So those two things have been working together. We've also had a very positive supply shock on the labor side, and also you get a positive supply shock when the supply conditions unwind and return to normal. So you've had above trend potential growth and high growth, and yet you've had the benefit of inflation coming down really fast actually last year, and we'll see what the rest of this year brings. So these dynamics can continue as long as they continue. Ultimately, the question is are you down to demand? And we don't know that, though. We're look at today's report. If we see more like that, we can't know what the future holds. But in the meantime, we've made pretty good progress on inflation with our current stance.
Michael McKee from Bloomberg Radio and Television. The base case of the committee seems to be that there is going to be at least one rate cut this year, but your growth forecast doesn't see any slowdown in the rest of the year, nor does the unemployment forecast see any significant weakening of the labor market. And your inflation forecasts basically average out to no change. So if at the end of the year there is no change from conditions now, why would you anticipate cutting rates? What would be the point for a rate cut?
Well, we think policy is restrictive, and we think ultimately that if you just set policy at a restrictive level, eventually you will see real weakening in the economy. So that's always been the thought, is that since we raised rates this far, we've always been pointing to cuts at a certain point, not to eliminate the possibility of hikes, but no one has that as their base case. So no one on the committee does. So that's how we think about it, and that's what we've been getting. That's what we've been getting is good progress on inflation, with growth at a good level, and with a strong labor market. Now, ultimately, we think rates will have to come down to continue to support that, but so far they haven't had to, and that's why we're watching so carefully for signs of weakness. We don't really see that. We kind of see what we wanted to see, which was gradual cooling in demand, gradual rebalancing in the labor market while we're continuing to make progress on inflation. So we're getting good results here.
Well, to follow up, is there any kind of concern for the housing industry or financial stability, banks, in leaving rates where they are for too long at this point?
On housing, the housing situation is a complicated one, and you can see that's a place where rates are really having a significant effect. Ultimately, the best thing we can do for the housing market is to bring inflation down so that we can bring rates down so that the housing market can continue to normalize. There will still be a national housing shortage, as there was before the pandemic. There will still be one, but the distortions that we see now with lock-ins and things like that, low mortgages. In terms of banks, the banking system has been, solid, strong, well-capitalized, lending. We've seen good performance by the banks. We had the turmoil early last year, but banks have been focusing on bringing up their liquidity, bringing up their capital, and having risk management plans in place. So the banking system, seems to be in good shape.
Chris.
Thanks. Chris Rugaber at Associated Press. I was wondering if we can, on inflation, if you can tell us a little more about where you see inflationary pressure in the economy. You mentioned labor markets coming into better balance, and inflation expectations appear to be well anchored. You're seeing, anecdotal stories of the large chains like Walmart and Target are announcing price cuts. McDonald's announcing a $5 meal deal. So, people may still be unhappy about prices at the grocery store, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of inflationary pressure left in this economy. I wonder if you could tell us more about it.
I think it's true that inflationary pressures have come down, but we're still getting high inflation readings. So, and I think you can see it in various places. In some parts of non-housing services, you see elevated inflation still, and that's probably it could be to do with wages. Goods prices have kind of fluctuated. There's been a surprising increase in import prices on goods, which is kind of hard to understand, and we've taken some signal from that, but. And of course, housing services, you're continuing to see high readings there. To some extent, that's catch-up inflation from earlier pressures. But overall, you're right. Inflationary pressures have come down. As I mentioned, the labor market has come into better balance. Wages are still running, I would say, above a sustainable path, which would be that of trend inflation and trend productivity. You're still seeing wage increases moving above that. We haven't thought of wages as being the principal, cause of inflation, but at the same time, getting back to 2% inflation is likely to require return to a more sustainable level, which is somewhat below the current level of increases in the aggregate.
Rachel. Hi, Chair Powell, Rachel Siegel from the Washington Post. Thanks for taking our questions. There's obviously a lot of focus on how many cuts could be expected this year, but can you give us a sense of what one cut by the end of the year would actually do to the economy, what you think would be a meaningful difference if there was a cut by the end of the year, or even two?
I think if you look back in 5 or 10 years and try to pull out the significance to the U.S. economy of one 25 basis point rate cut, you'd have quite a job on your hands. So that's not how we look at it. Really the whole rate path matters, and I do continue to think that when we do start to loosen policy, that will show up in a significant loosening in financial market conditions, and the market will price in what it prices in. I have no way of saying, we're not at that stage, so I don't know what we'll be thinking about at that time. But it's a consequential decision for the economy, and you want to get it right. And fortunately, we have a strong economy, and we have the ability to approach this question carefully, and we will approach it carefully while we're very much keeping an eye on downside economic risks should they emerge.
And you've been talking about this clear sense that it's just going to take longer to have the confidence that's needed for rate cuts. Is there something about what happened in the first couple of months of the year that you're seeing differently now with more time or hindsight? Do you still characterize it as expected bumpiness or something more lasting that is affecting your policy for the rest of the year?
We always want to avoid the tendency to dismiss the parts of inflation that we don't like and just make it go away. But we had a quarter where inflation was running higher, and yes, I could stand here and say it's stuff we shouldn't have taken signal from, but it is what it is. You have to, low inflation is low inflation, high inflation. So if you have a quarter where it's higher, we tried not to take signal from the first couple of months, but we got a third month and we said, okay, the signal we're taking is that we think it's going to take longer to get confidence that inflation is moving sustainably down 2%. That's what we said. I think that was the right thing to do. I still think that's the right thing to do. Now we have today's inflation reading, which is very different, very much more positive. we're going to have to see what the trend is, what's going to be the data going forward. We're looking for something that gives us confidence that inflation is moving sustainably down to 2%. And readings like today's, that's a step in the right direction, but one reading isn't. It's only one reading. You don't want to be too motivated by any single data point.
Jolene. Hi, Chair Powell. Thank you for taking our questions. I'm Jolene Kent with CBS News. What's your message to Americans who are seeing encouraging economic data but don't feel good about this economy?
This lady's intense.
I don't think anyone knows, has a definitive answer why people are not as happy about the economy as they might be. And we don't tell people how they should think or feel about the economy. That's not our job. People experience what they experience. All I can tell you is what the data show, which is we've got an economy that's growing at a solid pace. We've got a very strong labor market with unemployment at 4%. It's been a long time since we've had a long stretch of time with unemployment at or below 4%, very long time. We had a period of high inflation. Inflation has come down really significantly, and we're doing everything we can to bring that inflationary episode fully to a halt and fully restore price stability. We're confident that we'll get there. And in the meantime, it's going to be painful for people, but the ultimate pain would be a period of a long period of high inflation. It is people who, lower income people who are at the margins of the economy who have the worst experience, who experience the most pain from inflation. So, it's for those people, for all Americans, but particularly for those people that we're doing everything we can to bring inflation back down under control.
As just a quick follow-up here, you've indicated one interest rate cut sometime this year, and I know you don't have a crystal ball up there, but a lot of people are watching and see, borrowing money remains very expensive. For everybody who's out there waiting on a rate cut, about when can consumers expect some relief?
Well, I don't have a precise date for you, but what we said is that we want to make sure that we're confident that inflation is actually moving back down to 2%. And when we are, then we can look at loosening policy. So having that kind of confidence that inflation will be at 2%, it just pays benefits to the whole economy, to all Americans for a long period of time. We had that period for a very long time. We very much want to get back to a place where people can not think about inflation. It's just not a concern in the everyday economic decisions that they make. We were there for a long time, and our goal is to get back to that place. And we've made good progress, and we're in the phase now of just sticking with it until we get it done.
Claire.
Claire Jones, Financial Times. Just drawing on the change in the statement on there being modest further progress on inflation. Halfway, through the year and after today's CPI release, what have you and other committee members found that has been particularly encouraging to you? And just in terms of the conservatism, how much of that is about stickiness in shelter inflation in particular? Thank you.
So encouraging has been that growth, the growth clearly that we had last year, particularly the second half of last year, and we continue to see still strong growth, or solid growth this year. That's been very encouraging. If you go back a year, there was a real concern about, very much slowing growth and a recession. Many forecasters had that. And that's not what happened. Instead, the U.S. is, anyway, and it's in sharp distinction with many other advanced economies around the world. So that's been encouraging. I would say that today's inflation report is encouraging, but it comes after, several your reports that were not so encouraging. You ask about, your second question was really about shelter inflation. So I think if you go back a couple of years, we know that there are renters, and then there are people who own their houses, and we have OER, which is owner's equivalent rent. And so when market-based rents go up sharply, as they did at the beginning of when the economy reopened, they really went up sharply. Those play into rollover rents much more slowly for existing tenants than they do for new tenants. And so we found now that there are big lags. So there's sort of a bulge of high past increases in market rents that has to get worked off, and that may take
It
several
just keeps
years.
on getting so repetitive.
Nonetheless,
we'll
as
jump
long
ship.
as market rents remain
Talk about it.
are going up at relatively low levels, and they still are. This is just going to happen. It just is going to happen more slowly than we thought. We also do sort of this thing where we impute rental value to owned homes, and that's many countries around the world do that. Some do it differently than us. It's something that the price experts have regularly looked at. It is not something that we're the only country that does, and it's not something we're looking at changing or would look at changing, anytime soon. But it's true. It's one of the very hardest things in inflation and in prices is how to think about, the services that someone is getting by living in a home that they could rent, but they're actually living in it. And some countries you should just ignore that, but that's not how we do inflation here. We do it the way we do it, and we've been very transparent about it. And it's true that we're seeing delays in realizing what's happening economically, but we understand that. We understand that very well.
Edward.
Edward Lawrence with Fox Business. Thank you for taking the question, Chair Powell. So I want to go back to jobs and the consumer. The last jobs report showed that over the past year, 634,000 more people took multiple jobs. That's up 8.2%. And since January of 2021, we've seen prices rise 19%. So people are using their credit cards to pay for their lifestyle. What pressure points will signal to you that the slowing economy could maybe break companies in terms of hiring or break the consumer in terms of spending?
Good question.
We monitor all the things you mentioned and more. What we're seeing is basically spending was going up faster than disposable income during big parts of last year rather. And so what you'd expect to see is people spending more on their credit cards. That has been happening. Credit card balances have been going up. Credit card defaults have been going up. They're not at high levels. We remember that after the pandemic, people were cooped up. They couldn't spend money. They couldn't go out to spend money. They could spend money from home. But households were in very, very strong, historically strong financial shape. They've now worked off a lot of that. So we're watching that carefully. And, what do we see? That's what we see. We see the same data that everybody else sees, but you've still got household sector that's in pretty good shape. But nonetheless, it's not in the kind of shape it was in a year or two ago. And we're carefully watching that.
So how close then are we to that point where the consumer can't continue to spend as they're spending, or companies can't hire like they're hiring?
Consumer spending is still growing. It's not growing at the pace it was growing at a year or so ago, but it's still growing solidly. And by the way, other parts of the economy are picking up. Spending on equipment and intangibles has picked up quite a bit in the wake of all the construction that we saw of new tech plants. So overall, the economy is exhibiting solid growth, and something around 2%, which is a good pace of growth for the U.S. economy. But you're right though. We do see the same thing other people see, which is increasing financial pressures on more lower income people, and the best thing we can do is to foster a very strong jobs economy, which we think we have done. Ultimately, to get inflation under control, because those people experience inflation, very directly, very painfully, and once we get inflation under control, rates can come down, which will also improve things.
Victoria.
Hi, Victoria Guida with Politico. You've mentioned that an unexpected weakening in the labor market would bring rate cuts sooner, and I was just wondering, can you talk a little bit about what that would look like? Is it more of like a quicker pace of people losing jobs? Is it more the level of the unemployment rate if it were to start to go above 4.2 or something like that? How are you thinking about what you're looking for to see the job market unexpectedly weaken? When I say unexpectedly, the first thing is more than kind of is in our forecast or in common forecasts. So something more than that. But we'll be looking at everything. The labor market, has the ability, has the tendency sometimes to move to weaken quickly.
So waiting for that to happen is not what we're doing. We're watching very carefully. We're looking at the balance of risks. I always point out the balance of risks. So, and also the fact that we look at all of the whole situation. So, a decision to begin to, loosen policy could have several reasons associated with it at a given time. But I would just, we monitor all the labor market data, and if we saw troubling weakening more than expected, then that would be something we'd consider responding to. But we look at the broader context of what's going on too.
So something like negative payroll numbers would be.
I'm not going to. I mean, I can think of things that many things would make it on that list, but I don't think I'll utter them here.
Thank you, Chair Powell. Simon Rabinovich with The Economist. May I
We'll wait
ask,
for a
you
couple
mentioned
more,
with
and then I'm
the
gonna
slightly higher
stop.
PC readings earlier this year, that it wasn't 1 or 2 months, but 3 months that tipped you to be a bit more cautious in the rate outlook. Should we take from that it looks like May will be quite good for PC as it was for CPI? Does that imply that kind of 2 more good months would reinstill the confidence that rate cuts could be coming sooner than you currently project?
I don't actually have that kind of mechanical thing in my thinking. I get that, as many good ones as we had bad ones, but no, it's not like that. It's the whole. It's going to be the totality of the data, the labor market data, the growth data. In terms of inflation, you'd want to see real progress that builds your confidence that we are on a path down to 2%. And I don't want to try to give you specific numbers of things because that points to dates, and I just don't think we're not at a point of being able to do that.
Kosuke.
Thank you for doing this. I'm Kosuke Takami with Nikkei. I would like to know about the impact of stronger dollar on U.S. economic growth and prices. And I have no doubt that the market should determine the exchange rate, but Japan and some emerging markets are suffering from the strong dollar. So I want to know if it is having a positive impact on U.S. economy in total. Thank you.
So we don't, actually it's our finance ministry, the Treasury Department, that has a responsibility for thinking about and if it sees fit, doing things about the level of the dollar. So for us, it's just another financial variable. And you're right, the dollar has exhibited some strength over the course of the last year or so because the U.S. economy is very strong. We don't think of it as benefiting or hurting the U.S. We don't manage the level of the dollar. That's not our job. It's not, and for our economy, what we're trying to foster is maximum employment and price stability, and we feel like we've made good progress on both of those goals over the course of the past year.
Jennifer.
Thank you, Chair Powell. Jennifer Schonberger with Yahoo Finance. You said you would cut rates before inflation falls to 2%. You're forecasting inflation to end the year at 2.8% on core PCE, or at 2.8%, of course, on core PCE. Right now, you said the inflation forecast is conservative and that if you got 2.6 to 2.7 on PCE, that would be a good place to be. You also indicated the job market has mostly normalized. So why not cut rates this summer just once, you're well above neutral, to try to preserve the soft landing rather than risking waiting too long in the quest for confidence for inflation?
So we're well aware of the two-sided risks here. Let me just say, we understand that if we wait too long, that could come at the cost of economic activity, of employment, of the expansion. We understand that if we move too quickly, we could end up undoing a lot of the good that we've done and have to then start over, and it could be very disruptive. So we're extremely aware of both of those risks and just basically trying to manage them. And what we said is that we don't think it'll be appropriate to begin to loosen policy until we're more confident that inflation is moving down to 2% over time on a sustainable basis. That's kind of been our test. Or there's another test, which is an unexpected deterioration in labor market conditions. So I think that's the right way for us to think about it. That's our dual mandate there, and we have a strong economy. We've got growth all forecasts are very
Okay.
commonly around 2%.
I think we did it. Didn't we do it? I think we did it.
That's a strong growth rate for
Thank
our
you, Jay Powell. You did a great job today, buddy. All right, folks. How are we doing? Anybody in the chat still? You guys still watching this with me? Look, I'll say this about Jerome Powell and even many of those reporters, and at least it doesn't feel like a clown show. You know what I mean? The guy does exude some competence, and based on what he's saying and what we're looking at, it's being managed in a way where it does seem to be trending in the right direction. Obviously, there's a lot of things that a lot of us kind of see. I thought the Fox Business guy's point about credit card debt and the pressures on low income people, but that is obviously very, very real with rents going up so high, with gas going up high, and all of that stuff. But it seems bullish, right? I mean, the market must be reacting. How's the market reacting to this? Because to me, it sounds like, oh shit, if we get another cooling of like the inflation data continues to be even money or slightly cooling, and you just get slight ticks in unemployment, and you start to see a bit of a weakening in the job market, we're getting cuts. So it seems like they're predicting one cut, which I think we were at 2. I think the market was pricing in 2. So that might get realized that it might only be 1, but I don't know. I think we'll definitely get a cut before the election. And that should be positive in that moment. But yeah, like I said, I think that he's not the worst guy out there for sure. So we got Cap Hits. What's up? Good morning. Good to see your beautiful face. Nice to see you too, Cap Hits. What's going on? Everyday Algonaut. Good morning to you. Relax and sleep. Let's go. And then Ludo says, in the EU, the interest rates are going down already. Yep, they started to cut. Even in Canada, I believe they cut interest rates. So we're getting this. It's coming soon. Summer is the best for inflation in the EU, though, as a lot of our price rises were caused by unexpected rises in energy costs thanks to the war against Russia. We need to get through winter comfortably. Yes. And I think that is obviously something that we're doing in the United States, is that we are record setting using, that's not the way English works, but you get it. It's we've been tapping into our oil reserves at a record setting pace. And so that is obviously in the pursuit of keeping oil prices down over the summer when people are traveling a lot, because this administration probably would prefer that people not paying north of $5-6 a gallon right before a major presidential election. So I've noticed prices cooling down over the last few weeks because I know that the Biden administration has been drilling oil at record-setting amounts, and I think that's the right thing to do. And that's why I still think we obviously have a lot of conflict brewing. There's the talk of Saudi Arabia moving away from the U.S. dollar as their medium of exchange for oil. There is obviously Russia explicitly said that the United States is an enemy. That was new verbiage. You have this nuclear submarine or whatever in Cuba. I don't know what the fuck's going on, man. I mean, there's a lot of escalating situations. So there is certainly, and then you have just the financial markets and banks and these smaller banks, regional banks. Are we going to start to see that type of shit happen again? Is a war going to break out? So there's definitely black swan events looming, or I don't know if that looming, I guess, means that they're definitely coming. It doesn't mean that they're definitely coming, but it's sitting there. So they can manage everything perfectly, and then obviously something like that pops up and fucks everything up. So it's all kind of crazy. But I think if everything remains the same, if China, however that works out, if they decide to go into Taiwan, and how we respond to that, and obviously the escalation with Russia, between the United States and Russia, how all of that is handled. Outside of that, it seems like everything that they're looking for is trending in the right direction. With an election coming up, we're going to get an interest rate cut that should, get the market going. And then obviously in the United States, the choices as of right now are Donald Trump and Joe Biden, with obviously a dark horse candidate like RFK Jr. And when it comes to crypto, certainly Joe Biden winning the presidential election won't be a huge boon for the crypto industry, even though that they've pandered a touch lately. But obviously, Donald Trump is pandering on max pander right now. We're going to mine. He wants all of the remaining Bitcoin to be created in the United States, which would be good for American miners, right? Which means he's going to support that industry. Trump is certainly not concerned about the environmental impacts. He loves the oil industry and the coal industry and all of that. So we would see probably a very significant jump, and the bull run would continue. And then I think obviously RFK Jr. would also be bullish for the crypto industry. But who knows how that's going to shake out. We still have enough months. Everybody's in court. Joe Biden's son is convicted of, buying a gun and lying about crack. That's the least surprising thing in the entire world. If I were a crackhead, by the way, I would definitely, and wanted a gun, I would definitely lie about it as well. I mean, have you guys, I don't know if you've known many crackheads, but they tend to lie. I don't know what my point is. But yeah, so it's what a mess, right? What a mess. Okay, let's see. Fucking love Gianna Shees. Let me see. Was that the woman from CBS? Gianna Shees. Is that how maybe you spelt it wrong? What are we doing? How'd you spell that? Is it G's? Wait, where am I? Where'd I go here? No. Gianna. Is it Geese? No. So she's reporter. Let's put she's reporter. Trying to figure out which one she is. I don't know. I can't find it. Okay. Sorry, fisherman. I don't know. I forget which one she was. Glad we're focusing on what she's asking. I want to see what she's looking at. Which one she was. There's the man, our friend Howard. Oh, here we go. The ReCoop. Have you noticed that the ASA gold is now tracked by DeFi Llama? I have not noticed, but I'll check it out, Ludo. Relax and sleep. Luckily, the first winter after the war was quite warm, and there was enough gas in the storages to handle it. I remember this. Nowadays, even with cold winter, there's enough gas supply. There we go. We could still see prices rise, though, even if the rise is expected. Jerome talks about needing to ensure their rates aren't restrictive. I don't know Europe well enough to know if this was a concern. Well, obviously, BRICS and OPEC and all of them, they have the ability to tighten supply to drive prices up. And the Biden administration has been counteracting that move by tapping into the United States oil reserves and drilling here, like I said, at unprecedented levels. The energy prices went like 3x to 5x up at some point, and later it was lower and is still in decline trend. The thing is that the EU has decided to ban any energy import from Russia. So the more costly routes were used and more pipes were built to handle it. Wages are too high. What a cunt. I know. Isn't it fucking just so it's just like we're all rooting for people to, we want the labor market to cool. And that just means that people make less money or have to work 14 jobs. But the restrictive risks Jerome talks about are likely mortgage debt costs at higher rates, less spending, more defaults, not good for any economy. Wages need to be viewed in relative terms. Too high versus 10 years ago. Can't look at this in isolation. Too high based on cost of labor. Too high based on inequality spread. The rate cut will have important impact on crypto market because all VCs who has money now in the cash interest market will move their funds to other assets that can give them a higher return. There you go. Ludo points it out that a lot of people are just taking safe money right now. Easy money, easy, safe return. You can get 5%, 6% in these very, safe vehicles. And then if the rates continue to go down, then they're going to want to deploy that into the stock market. And potentially VCs that are focused in crypto and have seen and yielded the returns that are possible over there into crypto. And then we're going to probably see a bit of a blow off the top type of event. And it is in perfect unison with the Bitcoin halving and how it has behaved in the past, where there was the doldrums of the summer. And then all of a sudden, around the election time, it would be consistent with the history. You start to see an explosive move up. So, folks, we all might be in store. Some good times could be in store. Certainly, right now, Gary Gensler is going to step back a bit. There's not going to be no bombshell crypto events, you would think, before this election, because I don't think that anybody in that administration. I think that administration is waking up to, okay, dude, like, calm down. You're alienating a lot of voters, Gary. Oh, Gary, get in here, Gary. Where are you? Oh, there you are. Are you Gary? That's my Joe Biden impersonation. Okay, the rate cut will have important impact on crypto market. We already read that. Okay, we need to teach Coop how to use the second monitor. You indeed do need to teach me how to do certain things. I certainly have used it, but then I wanted to have the show. I'll figure it out, folks. Coop did not get a raise and still does not have the second monitor. You know what? I did not get a raise. Who's giving me a raise? Somebody pay me more money. Give me a raise. I love you guys. He's got one. The speakers just scare him. I could also just turn the volume down on the second monitor, right? Is that the solution, folks? I'm doing great. Do we really want to jump to the crypto market? I haven't looked today, but I've just put new pants on. Oh, I think it's probably pretty good. Bill Gates Energy doing the U.S. economy a service. Dude, where's my scooter? Hey, Gov. It's been a while, buddy. Late night ReCoop has turned into something that I need to stop doing because I don't feel great this morning. I will say I kind of like it, and maybe we can make this a regular thing, but I'll probably bring a little more structure to it and a little more lucidity to my delivery. But it's all good. I think we're having fun on those. They're small, but they're mighty. Have some good people in there having good chats. Do you think JP would be just as good by just flipping coins every so often? Maybe so. BTC touched 70 today. All right, we're ranging. We're ranging on the top end of this range now. Obviously, this little correction got us in the middle of the range. Like, we're in a range, folks. We're deranged in a range. I heard a rumor, which I haven't verified. If global temperatures rise, ice melt unlocks a new shipping route for China, incentivized to not fight climate change. Can't remember why I wrote this. Great. Man, I don't know. I feel like a woman towards the end nailed it by questioning the risks of waiting too long to cut rates when they're basing their decision off lagging indicators. Yeah. I think that is, that's also Elizabeth Warren's position. It's like a position of Elizabeth Warren's that I listen to and think, okay, well, that's actually a good question. That's a good concern. Yeah, man. But he answered it. He said, look, there is the risk of going too early, and there's a whole set of things that can happen if you move too early, and then there's a risk of going too late. So I'm not going to pretend like I know what that is. Bobo Coop. There we go. Is there a big pool? This crypto blow off top is making Coops very happy. Look at the cheeky grin. The dimples are showing. Oh, shit. Sleep is for pussies. That's right, Gov. Yeah, you don't sleep much, do you? Because you're in the States. I know it. So, and if you're not in California, you were up later than I was last night. So, good for us. Because I think I ended that thing around, 2:15, 2:30? Maybe even later. Those things are long. We go on forever. 3 hours? What are we doing? Just 10 of us just fucking yapping. Jeremy last night trying to get me to just talk about my life. All right, folks. Hey, what is the crypto market doing? I got to go, but let's check out the crypto market real quick. And we're going to CoinMarketCap. Well, let's actually first, why don't we do this? Let's go here, see how the stock market is reacting to old J Pow. All right. So the Dow is actually kind of going down a bit. S&P 500 is up almost 1%, and the NASDAQ is cooled off a bit since the CPI reading, but still very strong. All right. And then crypto. Oh, I was looking at memes. All right. Get off the memes, man. I don't want to look at the memes, man. All right. So Biddy Long Dong is actually not liking this last hour for some reason. Biddy Long Dong. 68.5. Still up. 35.5 for old Ether. ETH. I don't like it when people say that, even though it might be proper. XRP still sitting. Are you guys? Am I sharing this shit? No. Second monitor. Second one. All right. So second one. God, I'm out of it. Avalanche 33.5. It's ticked up. It was down there in the like 31, so it's actually outperforming a bit. Polkadot is creeping back up to $7. But we obviously with Bitcoin we have all the Mt. Gox stuff. Who knows what they're gonna do. What their plans are to manipulate the price down. Stacks on stacks on stacks. Down in the last hour, 237. Looking pretty good. Up over 8% in the last 24 hours. Hedera still under 10 cents. Your mom is free. Sui is 103. Algo. Not coin. Algo, Thorchain is hanging out about $5. I was going to buy some yesterday and didn't do it. Brett, oh man, this base token up 30% in the last 7 days. Top 60, it's in the top 61. Say what you want to say. Algo. Oh, sweet Uncle Algo. Sweet little Algo in a peppermint tree. Algo is at almost 16 and a half, basically. Up about 5% in the last 24 hours. Volume is anemic. Booyah kasha. All right, let's go look at Vestige. I saw somebody lamenting their Bobo. Bobo, man, that thing has been definitely performing. All right, are we sharing this instead? You want to share this? You guys actually want to see it, or do you just want me to fuck around? Okay, so the chips on chips, always number one in our hearts and our minds. DFly, always number two in our feet and our hands. Well, I don't know what that means. And then Polka Gold is number 3 at about 12.5 cents. Vestige, Opal sub 15 cents. GORA, GORA, sweet little GORA, 24.5 cents. What happened? The foundation dump on us? They find a new vehicle? Just kidding. Coop is for the gains and the things that you're going to get. Holding strong, folks. Holding strong. Getting geared up. Ready to take a flight into an avalanche. Nico 2. Votecoin, Ludo's in the building. Votecoin is doing it. $5,000 in volume. Pepe's on as front page news on Vestige, Cometa, 5 cents. That's also bled. And then Akita Inu. Algo 200 over a cent. Ba-do. Ba-dee-dee-dee. Ba-dum-dum-dum. All right, there you go, guys. I love you. All right, we're back. Let's do this. Coop, not sharing. I know. Sleep is for pussies. Okay, folks. Hey, thank you so much. We'll be back with the 2-monitor situation. We're going to keep on grinding and having a good time. Thanks for coming in, folks. And let's see what's going to happen, because the good news is that none of us actually have any fucking effect or control. Isn't that fun? Oh, relax and sleep. His Daffy is no longer page 1. Daffy reward. Not a lot of volume there on your Daffy reward.